So, really quickly, I want to get on here and I want to talk about being yourself, the power of being yourself. There's a lot of media, there's a lot of figures, there's a lot of energies out here that have a very potent pull, right? That has a very influencing um, energy about them, which is okay because, granted, we're in the influencing era, we're in the influencing time. But with all of these different type of pools, propaganda, media, it's very hard to create senses of identity that's not true to ourselves, right? When I say create senses of identities that's not true to ourselves, it's a saying that's actually very true when it says your mind and your actions is solely based upon the things that you intake, right? So if you're consistently intaking negative, if you're consistently intaking like a certain perspective, a certain environment, etc., that's going to be the way in which you see life until you step outside of that construct, right? So when you have all of these different things hitting you at one time, especially with the accessibility that we have, like our iPhones and Instagram and all these other mediums that just give us instant access to things that we probably wouldn't have had before these things, we have to make sure we're taking time to align ourselves and listen to ourselves, right? Because it's kind of difficult for you to move forward, build, and keep a sense of sanity, right? Because when you're trying to move from a spiritually aligned place, when you're trying to move from a place that's true to you, more times than not, outside interference doesn't necessarily help the situation unless what you're intaking is beneficial or cohesive to what you're trying to build, right? If you're trying to have more peace of mind, if you're trying to level up your finances, if you're trying to do whatever the case may be, make sure you're intaking things on your day-to-day life that's adding to that train of thought, right? If you're trying to work on your physique, make sure you're intaking content that's cohesive to eating patterns, that's cohesive to workout patterns, that's cohesive to different things like that. And your train of thought throughout the day will reflect the things that you're intaking, right? With all of these different influences around us, yes, it is, kind of damaging in a way, but it's also empowering in that same facet because you're able to kind of sculpt yourself in the ways that you want to. Now, once you get into deeper levels of this, you won't necessarily need any type of influencing. You could strictly pull it from yourself, strictly pull from your spirit and your experience, right? Because your spirit and experience are two very powerful things, right? There's, like when Nipsey said in one of his songs, there's no greater teacher in life than your own experience. That statement is beyond true. Because when you experience something and it's something that you can say is real, something that you can say you've intertwined with that energy and that reality, it's very hard to shift you from that, because it's very hard to shift you from your own truth, right? Because it's something that you experience, which is why perspective is very big. Because once you have a certain perspective, once you have a certain ideology, that's typically what you're going to view as true, right? So picking the things that we're using as inspiration almost throughout our day-to-day life will really help us. Because once you get to the point where you're just listening to your spirit and your experience, you start crafting your life in, I don't want to say almost like a zen, but it's like you put yourself in a bubble, right? That bubble crafts you from the inside out, right? You get all the knowledge, you get all the skill sets, you get all the information. It's kind of like God plants all the seeds inside of you, right? And then once you start getting into that experience factor, you start running into other people, you start running into other influences, you start running into other things. The first step was the spirit, and the second step was the experience. Once you start running into all of these different influences and all these different things, it's simply showing you parts of yourself that you can bring to light. Now, if you're picking things that's bringing out bad characteristics in you, that's what's going to manifest in your life. Like with this music, rap, hip hop, I notice, at least for me personally, if I listen to more aggressive, more damaging, more, upbeat music, it shows in my actions, right? I'll be driving, I'll be listening to a mellow song, I'll be listening to something very cool and just very down to earth. And I'll be driving kind of peacefully. My train of thought will be fine, whatever the case may be. If the next song is some type of aggressive rap hip hop song, next thing you know, I'm hitting on the acceleration. Next thing you know, I'm low key speeding. Music has a direct impact, the different frequencies that we're intaking, which is why I put so much of a emphasis on creating somewhat of a bubble in your life, right? You have to have an area within you that you go that isn't penetratable or easily swayed by things outside of you. It's kind of like your reset zone, right? If you have a reset zone and you ground yourself in that reset zone, once you start getting things that's not as cohesive or beneficial to your true sense of being, that reset zone starts to kick in and you start to have somewhat of a sense of comparison, right? Because comparison is actually very powerful. People say, oh, don't compare yourself, but comparison is what you make of it, right? If you compare yourself to somebody who has more than you or has more peace or perceived peace, right? You can choose two routes. You can either look at yourself and be like, oh my God, I'm just so terrible, I'm not where I want to be, and start feeling pitiful and start feeling bad about yourself. Or you can take that level of, comparison and be like, hey, there's another level to this. There's other, outlets, and there's other ways of thinking that I just haven't opened myself up to yet. And it's not until I open myself up or level up that I will see what truly can come from the things that I'm asking for. It happens to me too. It happens to all of us where we're not operating at our fullest potential because we haven't had something outside of us show us that we can tap in a little bit more. It takes comparison in certain facets for you to see what you're truly capable of. Like when it comes to fitness, I'm truthfully speaking, I'm very slender, right? It takes seeing somebody who's a little bit more built, a little bit more with their physique built out and, proper eating habits, etc., for me to actually acknowledge, okay, maybe I can get a little bit sharper in my gym routine. I can get a little bit sharper in my conditioning, my eating habits, etc. It takes a level of comparison. But if you don't have that sense of groundedness within yourself, it's going to be easy for you to become jealous, envious, discouraged, all these other type of things because you didn't have a sense of pillar or not even a sense of a pillar, a real pillar within you that's guiding you. When you're truly confident in yourself and you love yourself and you're truly being yourself, the things that you allow to take you off of your 10 toes is very minimal things that can truly do that to you until that inner sense of being kicks in and you can compare your lower state of being to a higher state of being. Once you can compare your own energy, it's so powerful. Am I operating from a low vibrational state? Am I operating from a sense of fear? Am I operating from a sense of empowerment? Am I operating from a sense of, integrity? Once you can compare your different energies, you then have choice. You have you can no longer say you're ignorant to the situation. If you're experiencing something and you don't know what you're experiencing and you don't have a opposite to compare it to, then of course you're going to be a victim to ignorance. But once you have something to compare it to, now it's a victim of choice. Are you choosing to do something different? And once you choose to do something different, then the circumstance changes. But nothing necessarily changes until you choose to do something different. So be true to yourself, live through yourself, be true to your spirit. That's the core foundation of all of it. And then allow yourself to experience, allow the comparison, allow the joy, the love, and all that other type of things to, show you different elements of yourself. So when you return back to that sense of being and that sense of self, you have a reference point. You have something that you can improve on. You have something that you can, take a level of accountability, because none of us are perfect. We can all use a sense of inspiration and, encouragement from something else outside of us that is at a higher level of being in that specific area, right? So take your inspirations wisely. Take all this influencing and all this media and stuff that you're taking in, take it wisely, and then apply it in the ways that you can and that you see beneficial. I love y'all.